It was about 10 years ago that I first met my wife on a website called Match.com. Back then, the idea of meeting people online was still relatively new. People would ask me questions like, how do you know it's safe? Or how do you know she's not crazy? But it worked for us, and before long, we were seeing each other almost every day. But at that point, I really had no idea that getting online would eventually lead me to becoming a husband. But Nicole and I never imagined that a few years later, we would take advantage of the internet to find our daughter. Adoption is one of those things that most people don't really think much about. That's what I'd like to talk to you about today. We don't think about it until it touches our own family in some way. So you may not realize how much technology has played a part in changing the adoption process just in the last few years. So I'm very proud to be able to share my story with you today. After we got married, my wife and I decided that we wanted to have a baby. And like many couples, we faced an unexpected battle with infertility. It was a difficult process and a hard one. And eventually we said, enough is enough. Maybe adoption would be a better path for us. And so that's what we did. But there was a lot to learn. People don't really tell you much about it. There were classes to take, social workers to meet, and piles of paperwork. And at the end of all that, the adoption agency sent us a letter that said, congratulations, you've been approved. Now you can go find that baby. And if you believe the media and the movies, then our next step would have been to go home and sit by the phone and hope or maybe pray that we'd get that phone call that there was a baby waiting for us. But in fact, it's not like that. It's really almost the opposite. They tell you to be proud of the fact that you're trying to adopt, to talk to your friends and family about your plan to adopt, because you never know where that connection might come from to create that adoption situation. And the funny thing is that when you first sign up with an adoption agency, one of the first things they have you do is to create an online profile with pictures and a little bit about who you are as a family. And the idea is that you're trying to tell your story to someone that might be facing a difficult decision. And so we took advantage of the internet and the online profile and Facebook and email to try to tell our story to everyone that we could think of, just in case. And along the way, the more we talked about our dream, the more we met other families who had all been touched by adoption in some way, other couples that were trying to adopt, family members who had adopted long ago and shared their story with us, neighbors with kids that we had known for years but never realized had been adopted, a friend from high school who at age 35 announced on Facebook that she had just met her birth mother for the very first time. All these people were creating connections online, building families in new kinds of ways that were not even possible just 5 to 10 years ago. And it was one of those families, another adoptive couple, that led us to a young woman who was 6 months pregnant and considering adoption. And all we had at first was a name and an email address. And it was up to us to reach out to her and try to build a connection, to build a relationship, to build some sense of trust, to see if maybe adoption would work. And after some emails and some meetings, it seemed like we had a plan, and we were on track to make that happen. And 3 months later, my wife got a text message on her smartphone, and it said, "Come to the hospital. She's going into labor." And so on a cold, very cold Thursday night, we drove to a small hospital just outside of Columbus. And the next thing I knew, we were in a delivery room watching a young woman that we had only just met a few months ago giving birth. And the doctor said it was one of the fastest deliveries that they had ever seen. But the whole time, we were simultaneously so excited and yet so completely terrified because she could have changed her mind at any point in her process, and that would have been the end of it for us. But sure enough, she gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl. And they gave me the incredible honor of being the one to cut the cord. So I was there from the moment she was born. And 3 days later, those tattooed teenagers that we hardly knew walked out of that hospital, gave us the greatest gift anyone ever could. And when they gave us that baby, And we put her in a car, and we drove home. And that was the day that she became our daughter. And since then, we've been able to take advantage of social media to stay connected with that young couple, to share our stories and our pictures about our lives together with that little girl, but also to learn more about them and where they came from and what they're interested in. And someday she'll be able to use social media to learn more about her biological family and where she comes from. But not just those two young people, their friends, their families, people in other cities, other states who have all had some connection to that young couple and this little girl that we adopted. And so we've used social media to create a whole new kind of family, an extended family that we never could have imagined. And staying connected with those young people and making a special kind of family through adoption. So that's our story of how we adopted our daughter. And I hope that you think about your own perceptions of adoption. But I also challenge you to think about how you can use social media in new and exciting ways to stay connected with your family and your friends, people that you care about, things that you're passionate about, whether you collect comic books or whether you're fighting a battle with cancer. There are other people who share your passion and are desperate to hear from someone like you. And you never know, there might be another couple out there who's waiting to adopt, and you might be that connection that they're looking for.